Dr. Beck, how did someone with an exceptional beard like you have come to work at the university instead of spending a lifetime modeling for some rugged, outdoorsy, manly man product like a double-sided chainsaw or something like that?
That was a tough decision,
Yes.
Sebastian, but after a lot of thought and a lot of years, I decided to pursue academia.
Welcome to the Undergrowth. This is where we speak to celebrated scientists and eminent educators about plants and pests. Let us embrace knowledge together on this expedition into mysterious realms. I'm Sebastian Eugene Bartholomew, and this is the Undergrowth. Today on the program, I have the distinct pleasure to welcome Dr. Billy Beck, an extension forester and faculty member at the Royal Academy of Iowa State University. We will be discussing establishment and maintenance of windbreaks. Dr. Beck is part of a department at the university known as the Natural Resource Ecology and Management Department, which, as everyone knows, focuses on the finer technical aspects of chainsaw art and grizzly bear wrestling. Is that not so, Dr. Beck?
Nailed it, yes.
Nailed it. Thank you. It's hard to be wrong with facial hair like this. I'm sure that you can agree.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Instead of the bear wrestling and chainsaw modeling.
It just wasn't fulfilling.
It's just, I don't know. It's really cutthroat. It just wasn't my speed. So I get calls all the time to return, but just can't do it. Graduated with a forestry degree, worked, kind of switched gears to hydrology, went back to school, worked again for about 4 or 5 years, decided I liked sciencey stuff, so went to grad school again at Iowa State, and then I'm back to work again. So schoolwork, and surrounded by a bunch of good people. So,
Oh, indeed.
yeah. We manage our woodlands to get these outcomes, both for the landowner, but also for society in general. So,
Right. So they help to connect people with trees and the things that are going on around them.
yes, we ensure that woods are resilient and vigorous, so they can provide all the great things that they provide to us. So,
Sounds like an amazing job.
it is. We foresters are, we're a small bunch, but we're
Plucky. Plucky?
Yes.
Okay.
I was searching for that word. Plucky, yes.
Well, we like to start these out with some form of question or quiz, and today you're in luck. It's a quiz. I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and if you get one of them right, you will win the grand prize.
Ooh, just one?
Just one,
I like those
25%. Yes. Why do beavers slap their tails?
As a warning that danger is approaching.
What kind of danger?
Oh, humans, incoming artillery, invites to places they don't want to go. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, so anything there that might annoy them. So.
Oh, that's great. You've already won, but let's continue on.
Okay.
Where is the largest beaver dam located?
I don't know.
Wood Buffalo National Park in Canada.
Really?
Seen from outer space.
I did not know that.
Oh, we all learn continually, don't we? Well, I'm glad you got the first one right.
I mean, I know.
What is the only rodent that is larger than a beaver?
Wolverine? Nutria.
You know, almost right. Nearly correct with the polar bear. It is a capybara.
Ah!
South American friends.
Interesting.
Right, okay, final question. What are trees made of?
Lots of love, good thoughts, and wood, mostly, yeah.
I'm confused by your answer. Love, good thoughts, carbon. What's the other 50% made out of?
50% carbon, 50% good thoughts. So, carbon, water, and a bunch of other nutrients, so.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you've got 2 questions correct. That's 50%. If I had 2 grand prizes, I'd give them both to you, but alas, I have but one. I have been dabbling a bit in chainsaw-themed art.
Wow.
There was some other men in the frat that got barbed wire around their biceps, but me, I wanted to be different. And I got a chainsaw chain around my bicep, back in the day.
It's amazing.
Quite a bit faded. And so I've kept that spark alive. And I've created some chainsaw-themed jewelry. And so today I'd like to award you with your very own chainsaw necklace. Oh, you're putting it on? It's going to catch in your beard. Scratch your glasses. Oh my goodness. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I will never take this off. So
I'll actually need it back when I'm done. But
So it's not a prize?
It is for a little bit. You get to wear it for a price. Maybe I can give it to you. I don't know. I'll have to ask the wife.
It's actually starting to hurt a bit, but...
You should probably take it off. I don't want it to create some sort of jugular... All right, well, this brings us to today's topic, best windbreak practices. Tell us, Dr. Beck, what are the primary functions and benefits of a healthy windbreak?
Well, the primary function is to reduce wind speed for a variety of reasons. It can be energy savings in your home, protection of livestock in the summer and winter.
Okay.
Dictating where snow drifts and where it doesn't drift, that's a big one. But there's also other compound benefits that folks really enjoy. A big one is just having wildlife close to their either farmstead or house that they can see up close and enjoy. Pollinator benefits. If they're elaborate enough, you can actually get non-timber forest products out of them, such as florals and wild edibles and things like that. So they do a lot more than just blocking the wind. So privacy is another big one. You know, I don't think anybody wants to see what I'm doing at my place, so that's a good thing. How they kind of function, obviously, they redirect the wind flow, and it's kind of impressive. Up to 30 times the height of the mature vegetation is like that protected zone.
Really?
And it's not all just 0 mile an hour wind. It's a reduction in wind speed, and then as you get to about 30 times out, we catch up back to the regular infield wind speed there. But they also, it's good to have wind go through them too. So you don't want this like solid wall of vegetation, because when it goes through like that, it busts up some of the turbulence on the windward side, and that makes that protection zone go a little bit longer. Some physics there. It's kind of like flowing water. Wind kind of flows like water, which is kind of cool. But so like you look at the sciencey literature there, you've got reductions in energy costs
for the homeowner,
for home and for livestock. You got added weight gains in the winter with livestock that are protected by windbreaks, and crop yields too, which you don't see a lot of field windbreaks in Iowa, but there's data that show that row crops can benefit from properly placed and established windbreaks as well. One weird thing that I never thought about that actually happens is there's actually a little bit of wind reduction on the windward side of the windbreak.
Indeed.
So about 2 to 5 times the height of the mature vegetation, you've got wind reduction on the windward side. So if you properly place that in a crop field, there could be benefits there too. So
many interesting things. As one can guess, beards and facial hair like ours take more than one day to develop into the glorious, beautiful manscapes that they are. We all know that it takes more than a single day to build and grow a windbreak. How long does it take for a windbreak to become established?
Well, I guess that really depends on what you're looking to do and the species you planted and how well you're taking care of it.
Oh.
So, honestly, if you're not looking to protect a large area, they can be ready to rock in, 5 years or so. The break behind us is pushing probably 40 years.
Oh my.
So yeah, it kind of depends on your species and what you want to protect. If you've got a massive area to protect, it's going to take a little bit longer to get up and running. So, but that goes back to matching your species to your site and what you want to get out of them, but also selecting species, preferably native, but that are at least hardy in Iowa's climate, and then really taking care of them, preventing weeds from really competing with them, invasive species, irrigation, moisture control. All that stuff is going to get your windbreak up and running quickly.
Okay. Tell us, Dr. Beck, what are some ways that windbreaks can go wrong?
Ooh, I've seen them go way wrong.
Yes.
So, yeah. I think the biggest thing out there is planting one single species. The worst thing you can do is plant one species in one row.
Oh my.
Yes. So it keeps me up at night, honestly, when I see that driving around.
Stuff of nightmares.
Yeah. It's not good.
One road, single species windbreaks.
Yeah. I'm actually getting a little flustered right now just thinking about it.
It's like a man without any curls in his mustache.
Yeah. I mean, who would think that? Who could deal with that?
I know. There are some out there.
But that's bad, because obviously if something specific to that tree species comes along and knocks it out, you've completely lost your windbreak functionality. And then also with the one row, if you get certain individuals that get knocked out by wind or ice or whatever, now you've lost the functionality of that windbreak just like that. So what I love seeing behind us here is multiple species, multiple rows.
Okay.
That's probably the biggest thing you can do. Not the biggest, but one of the biggest things you can do to ensure a functional windbreak. The other one is taking care of the trees. A lot of folks just plant and walk away. They don't have an irrigation plan. They don't have a weed control plan. They don't have a deer and rabbit protection plan. So with all the work it takes to get a tree in the ground, you can't just walk away. You got to really protect these things. And this is like, months in advance. You really got to start thinking about, how am I going to water these? How am I going to protect these from deer? Do I need to prune these? Like, what are my resources? So a lot of people kind of they get excited in spring, and there's a tiny little window and we're all busy, and they just put these things in the ground, and they kind of just walk away from them. It's like a row crop field. You can't just walk away in May. So,
yes, yeah. Or a child. You can't just go through the birthing process and not paint the nursery, right?
That's true. My parents released me into the woods at age 3.
I see that was a good idea.
Yeah, well, sometimes.
Call you in for Christmas?
Yeah, yep. When I got mail, they'd bring me back and things like that.
Right, and you're accepted to the Royal Academy. Billy?
Yeah, time to come back. Yep. This is a hackberry. It's a tree that doesn't get a lot of love, but I think it's a great potential windbreak species. It's fairly disease-free. It works on a lot of sites. It's got good wildlife value. It's good to just throw in some extra diversity into a windbreak with hackberry. It's got a little bit of shade tolerance too, so it's not gonna completely conk out when its neighbors start getting close. So this is one I would love to see in more windbreaks. And it's got great bark. I don't know, it's cool to see like species that have like year-round beauty, but it's got this like raised warty bark here. It's really neat.
So we have learned that good planning at the get-go is an important part of avoiding a bad end when breaking wind.
Huge, yes.
Can you discuss design and species composition of windbreaks?
Yeah, that's a big one too, and it's challenging because space is often at a premium around farms and farmsteads, homesteads, cattle operations, livestock operations. So one big thing with design is being realistic about spacing. Like honestly, 25, 30 foot apart, both rows and the individual trees, is needed for a longevity of the windbreak. Now, the spacing within the rows really depends on how big your mature vegetation is going to get. Okay. And the professionals can help you with that, deciding what would be a good species to put in there. But between the rows, you're talking, 30 foot for longevity, and you start pacing that out, that's a lot of room that you got to give up. So, yes. But if you want to do it right, that's something you really got to be thinking about. Another thing to think about is spacing them from your house or whatever you're trying to protect, because a lot of the snow is going to drop on the leeward side of that windbreak. So if you put your windbreak too close to your barn or house, you're going to get a big buildup of snow, maybe where you don't want it. So really thinking about backing that break up from the structures, at least 5 times the height of the mature vegetation is some good planning there. You definitely want them oriented for the maximum zone of protection, 90 degrees from the prevailing winds. So in Iowa, it's kind of easy. In the winter, we have north and west winds hitting us. So a lot of our windbreaks that we see, like this one, go from south to north and from west to east, depending on what they're trying to protect. And also, too, you want to go a distance linearly, you know, if that's the right word, linearly. Anyway, on the ground, you want to go beyond what you're trying to protect, about 100 feet.
Okay.
Which we're getting, the space is adding up here. And this is ideal world, but like, because as you know, the wind goes over the break, but it also goes around it. So the further we can go linearly, beyond the thing we're trying to protect, that will increase that zone of protection. And then really think about height too. I should have started with height. Height's the number one thing that drives that protective zone of reduced wind velocity. So like I said before, 25 to 30 times the height of the mature vegetation to the leeward side is going to be protected reduced wind velocity. And obviously it starts the greatest right behind the break, and it kind of tapers off. But still, the last thing I'll say is that multiple rows are very good, not only for insurance, but for some of the compound benefits too. And I'll step back a bit. You know, you look at like 10 rows of trees. Beyond that, you're not going to really see a lot of wind reduction benefit, but you're going to see great wildlife habitat benefit. You're going to see more options for personal use of maybe non-timber and timber forest products. You're going to see a lot more pollinator benefit, aesthetics, you know. So going super wide, not the greatest for wind reduction, but you're going to see all these other great compound benefits. But we always say at least 3 rows. At least 3 rows, properly spaced out. Native species that match your site and soils, and have a plan for protection. That's going to be a good windbreak.
We are in central Iowa here. What are some of the native species that could be used for establishing a windbreak here?
That's a great question, and one we're often challenged with, because you know, we kind of rely heavily on conifers because they keep their needles in the winter. Right. But Iowa really only has a handful of native tree-form conifers. Okay. So conifers in our state they struggle because they're just not used to Iowa's climate. So honestly, in central Iowa, we've got one, and that's eastern red cedar, which a lot of people don't like, but it is an exceptional windbreak species. Also, there's eastern white pine, which is native to eastern Iowa. Oh, Yellow River, Yellow Forest? Yeah. Okay. Northeast, eastern Iowa along the Mississippi. And there's a little pocket in, I think, Hardin County we have native eastern white pine. So those are our 2 native conifers. There's also some hardy non-natives like Norway spruce, what we have in the back row here. But I really think we rely a little bit too much on our conifer species. And I don't want to go searching the world for the next perfect conifer and then have it get knocked out by some, you know, either Iowa's climate or something else. So I'm really trying to push using deciduous species, native deciduous species for our windbreaks, because the options for native deciduous species, and especially shrubs, really expands our options there. So, right, and deciduous trees can block the wind even in the winter when they no longer have leaves? So, yes. So it's not going to be as powerful as a single row of conifers. You're looking at 5 rows of deciduous species to equal the wind blockage of 1 row of conifers. Okay. But if we mix it up with a few conifers and a few hardwoods, especially, I've been thinking a lot lately of hardwoods that tend to keep their leaves in the winter. Like an oak? Yes. Okay. So like swamp white oak, even species like ironwood, maple to some extent. It's called marcescence. It's a big word I try to practice a lot. But the leaves aren't functioning, but they're there. And it adds a really cool visual effect, but that could, you know, add a little bit more to the deciduous species' power in blocking the wind there. So I just hate relying on conifers so much when I go around the state and they just don't do well.
Are there any fruit-bearing deciduous trees which could find their place in a windbreak?
Yeah, obviously oaks. You can eat acorns if you really want.
Oh yes, get the tannins out first, right?
Yeah, yep. Hackberry, black cherry, and the shrub row you can go wild. So serviceberry, elderberry, ronia berry, wild plum, chokecherry. What did I miss? Anyway, tons of native shrubs, a lot of wild edibles options there. So,
Tell us, as our little trees are busy growing, how does one promote tree vigor?
Yeah, you really have to get them off on the right foot. You know, I was shipped off to the woods early, so.
On the right root, maybe?
Off the right root, yes. Can I use that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Off on the right root, yes.
I'll expect a kickback.
First thing you got to do is prepare the site. And I don't think a lot of folks think about that. If it's highly competitive vegetation on your site, say cool season grass that really competes with the roots of young seedlings, you got to knock that out. As you can see behind us here, this is going to be a shrub row probably next spring, and the landowner is really doing a good job on knocking this back, and they're going to plan to hit this with herbicides so they can take this out and really give those young roots competitive advantage. The next thing I would think about is your irrigation plan.
Okay, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Tell us more, please.
Yes, irrigation is tough. It takes a lot of work, and of course, these last few years especially, we're just not getting the rainfall. And these young seedlings do not have a robust root system, so they're really at the mercy of the weather. So having an irrigation plan put together, and it could be as elaborate as a drip irrigation system, it could be as simple as going around with a bucket, which I did, which is very time consuming. A lot of folks have tanks on trailers with hoses and pumps. They can go around and hit these things at regular intervals, but really having that plan in place. A bonus, if you don't have a plan, that's not good. But one thing that could save you is mulch. Mulch around the seedlings gives a little bit of weed protection, but it also really locks in the moisture that is there. So mulch is amazing. I love mulch.
But don't make a mulch volcano, correct?
That is true. Yeah, a lot of folks, I can demo it here, they put that mulch right up to the stem and just pile it high. That's a breeding ground for fungus.
Disaster.
Yeah, for disaster, it is. So you want to make the donut. So.
Mulch donut. May I use that one?
Yeah, you would. We're even.
We'll trade. Okay.
Cool. So yeah, mulch donut. You want to bring that mulch a little bit back from the stem, but also have a pretty decent, 3-4 inch layer around that seedling. And I like to go big. I'm talking, if it's in a big row like this, I go at least about, a meter on each side ideally. And that helps keep the mower away and things like that. Next is deer and rabbit protection.
Oh, vile creatures.
I know. You have one deer or rabbit come in, it could decimate a windbreak overnight.
No, my.
So there's a few options. There's cages, so metal cages, but you really got to watch to see what you're protecting against.
Right, you put the cages around each rabbit and each deer, correct?
Yes. Yep. So that's a lot of time tracking those things down.
They can go fast.
Yes. Actually, that's a really good idea. I'm gonna look into that. But as for now, we actually cage the trees, which I know is kind of counterintuitive.
Yes. I suppose.
Maybe we're doing it wrong. I don't know.
I suppose limiting their freedom is okay in the long run if they'll grow up to be healthier. But sometimes I think about animals in the zoo, healthy and long-lived, but just desirous of the open plains. And
wow, now I feel guilty.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No. These poor trees, caged up, not reaching their potential.
I know.
No, but cages are great. There's challenges with cages, but having like a really sturdy cage is important for deer especially.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking like rebar, T-posts. Don't put a little dinky stake in there of wood or something like that that's going to deer will come in and knock those cages right off. So, And honestly, too, you're talking like 5 foot to get out of the reach of deer browse for a cage. So for deer, strong cage, T-post or rebar, and have that correct height. For rabbits, you really got to watch the mesh size of that wire cage that you're putting on. So sometimes if you're looking to protect against both, you have the deer cage, and then I'll wrap a fine mesh wire, like chicken wire, around the base so the rabbits can't get in there, or mice or voles or something like that. So there's also tree tubes, which are those long plastic kind of sleeves you see, which are also about 5 feet tall to get above the brows of the deer. There's challenges with those. They're expensive. Not that metal cages aren't, but they're expensive. They don't last as long as cages, and they don't really promote a wind firm seedling, because it's got a lot of protection. It doesn't have to move a lot. So if a tree's out in the wind, it's going to build up that kind of stout trunk. So these trees in cages are not that wind firm. But there's pros and cons to both. The biggest thing is protect them using whatever creative strategy you want. If you want to get real elaborate, there's fencing. You can actually completely do a high fence to exclude deer, or you can do like a 3D fence, which messes with the deer's depth perception.
Right.
A hot wire fence that's immediately adjacent to the trees is a little bit higher than the one that's further out, but the deer see that, they can jump over it, but their depth perception, it messes with them to see those two that are at different heights, and they kind of avoid it.
And those must be an electric wire then?
It's very helpful.
Very helpful.
Because putting in 2 fences is almost cost prohibitive for a lot of folks. Last thing, I've seen a lot of success in high deer pressure areas in the northeast part of the state is this blood slurry spray that you can spray in the area. Doesn't really have to be
not your own blood, right?
No.
It's important to remember.
Yes, yeah. We've had that's not good.
Tragic endings to many foresters who
that would be over fast.
Forgot Forestry 101.
But it's like a blood slurry that you spray in the area, and it's like a fear deterrent. So the deer get in there, and it's not like they're nibbling and it's a bad taste. They kind of sense that like something bad has happened here, and I probably shouldn't be going in here. So that's for I've seen success in that in very large plantings in the northeast. So windbreaks, though, we still need to do some trials on that. So there's a lot of ways to protect. So you got to know what you're protecting against, and you got to know your resources, your time commitment, your financial resources. But foresters and other folks around the state can help you with that. So
how can healthy breaking of the wind be maintained as the seasons and the years of life go past?
That's a really good question. And these things they have a lifespan, and they need help along the way. It's not just, like I said, plant them and forget them. You really need to monitor these things over time. And I know a lot of folks don't walk their woodlands, they don't walk their windbreaks, but really be out there at least every season to see what's going on.
Go outside once in a while.
Yeah, get outside once in a while. Walk around. It's nice in the winter. It's nice and warm behind the windbreak. In the summer, it's nice and cool. So, but I think monitoring is key, and then, addressing these issues as they pop up. So, like, one big one is are there invasive species entering your windbreak? Invasive vines, things like that could eventually block out the foliage you want. Invasive vines like Oriental bittersweet could add weight to the canopy for ice and wind damage. So really monitoring and addressing things that pop up like that. Proper pruning of any storm damage, things like that. Monitoring for disease and insects is huge as well, to keep these things going. One thing I will say is that if you don't plant at a wide spacing, thinning these out is really helpful. To prolong the functionality of these windbreaks long term, because like we were talking about earlier, especially conifers, when their canopies start to touch, they're going to start self-pruning or shading each other out.
Oh my.
So if you got a tightly packed windbreak in there, you're going to have to be diligent and come in and space thin so those other canopies can reach out and regain and maintain functionality over time. So that's the real big one, I think, is watching those canopies close, and if thinning is needed, really have at it.
So I'm hearing some very basic integrated pest management concepts here. If you're going to do a windbreak, you must think about what type of species and proper site selection and spacing and all of those things to get a well-established, healthy windbreak going on. And then you must be scouting or monitoring it to be aware of any sort of diseases or potential problems that crop up that you then have to identify and then mitigate.
Correct.
So it's an active process.
It is. I really tell folks to get out. The best time, I think, or one of the best times, is winter, which I know folks don't like to get out in winter, but wintertime you can really see the structure of the windbreak, especially if you've got a deciduous tree component, which I hope big folks do. You can really see the canopy, you can see if there's any damage, and honestly, if it's snowing out, you can see if there's holes in the break that you may need to address.
Indeed.
So like you see that snow coming out at one spot and really depositing in maybe areas you don't want. Walking around on a windy day, if you hit a spot where it's, uncomfortable, a wind tunnel effect, that you may need to address that gap. So
you have given us an enormous amount of good information today about windbreak care and maintenance and establishment. Where can one go? What resources exist for someone to find out more or to review the information that you have uttered?
Yeah. If you're thinking about a windbreak, it's kind of flipped in Iowa versus traditional forestry. The Natural Resource Conservation Service is your first stop for windbreaks.
Okay.
They handle the design. They handle the cost share that may be involved if you want to go that route. They can help you with species selection and thus spacing, and they can get a plan put together for you. If you do have a professional forester, either a private consultant or someone you work with the Iowa DNR, they can come in later and also be a great resource for just tree resource management. But your first stop should be the Natural Resource Conservation Service at your county USDA service center.
Where's your second stop?
Maybe lunch.
Oh, yeah. Indeed. Always part of a good windbreak establishment.
Yeah. So I would say NRCS is first, and then your professional forester second. And there's a lot of great resources, windbreak resources on our website, the Natural Resource Extension. I'm going to have to say that again because I can never remember the name.
All right.
Natural Resource Stewardship Extension website. There's a lot of great online windbreak content there. And then also we've got windbreak programming, shameless plug, around the state.
It's not shameless.
No, not shameless, yeah.
Not shameless
Windbreak school often takes place in late summer, and many folks are saying, why is late summer windbreak season? And I say, late summer is a great time to start planning for your spring windbreak, because most conifers we often recommend to plant in spring. So late summer planting in did I say planting or planting?
Plurting?
Plurting.
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 Which means both.
Yeah, it's good to plurt. So late summer is great for planting, because if you're going to plant in spring, which most folks do, this gives you ample time to meet with NRCS, get your design, get any kind of cost share, get signed up for any kind of cost share. But one thing that people don't think about that I fall into a lot is ordering your stock, ordering your seedlings. After the derecho, and again, I'm trying to get people pumped about trees,
Right.
Stock's very limited lately, especially after the derecho came through central Iowa. So ordering for spring and fall is good, because I did this a couple years ago. I tried to order my seedlings in spring, and it was not the size and not the species I wanted. Everything was sold out. So then you're kind of like, what do I do now?
Right.
So order your stock in fall for a spring windbreak planting. So
Indeed. In the show description, we can add all sorts of resources to what you have just described so that folks can go there if they desire to establish a windbreak of their own. Dr. Beck, this conversation reminds me of the bucolic days that I spent as a wet-behind-the-ear forest ranger living off the grid near Lancashire, drinking maple syrup directly from the veins of trees, knitting socks out of cottonwood seeds, my palms growing rough as hickory bark as I worked in the forest. I can still hear the sounds of the forest filling my mind when I wake in the middle of the night, The voices of the trees calling me back to live with them forever. Is that how it feels to be an extension forester, Dr. Beck?
Pretty darn close. You swept me away there.
I spoke to your very soul.
You did.
Our viewers will be very happy once they listen to this diatribe of tree-related utterings. So I want to say thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Sebastian. It's been a pleasure.
I'm Sebastian Eugene Bartholomew, and this is The Undergrowth.
I saw a photo of a bicycle being enveloped by a tree.
Eaten by a tree.
Basically eaten very slowly. We shouldn't have been riding back there.
Stay away from trees on your bicycles.
Yeah.
Everybody knows trees hate bicycles.